What's up everyone, I'm Matt from UA, and today we're going to check out the Electra 88 Vintage Keyboard Studio. Electra gives you the beautiful sound and vintage vibe of the legendary Rhodes 88 Mark I electric piano, complete with a virtual studio filled with classic amps, pedals, microphones, and rack effects, with each circuit accurately modeled from end to end in full UA quality. The intuitive and immediate interface keeps the most useful controls within reach at all times, with dedicated pages that let you go as deep as you want into each part of the signal chain for unmatched creativity and flexibility. Electra features over 100 album quality presets that let you load up instant inspiration for any genre with just a couple of clicks, from classic jazz, funk, and rock tones to experimental lo-fi and synth-inspired sounds. Whether you're a seasoned performer or an in-the-box producer, Electra has something to match your style. Let's listen to a few audio examples and walk through the controls so you can see just how deep this plugin goes. Electra is set up with quick and easy settings in the bottom row that keep the most useful amp, pedal, and studio effect settings within reach at all times, but there's also dedicated pages that let you go even deeper. On the keyboard page, we have an overview of everything that's currently being used. On the pedals page, we can change pedal settings and swap them out for other options. On the amplifier page, we have 3 different amps to choose from and a bunch of different mic settings. And on the studio effect page, we have 5 different rack mount units to let you put the finishing polish on your sounds. Now with all these different options, Electra is capable of everything from classic Rhodes sounds to more experimental sounds that don't even sound like a Rhodes at all. So to show you that, I'm gonna load up a few presets here. I'm gonna play around with just the controls in the bottom row, and we're gonna see what kind of range we can get. So the first preset we're gonna check out is called Tell You Why. This is a classic Rhodes sound that uses the suitcase amplifier, which is the one that came with the Rhodes 88 originally. And it also uses the wah pedal, the phaser, and some of the studio effects for some nice modulation. Now the next preset we're going to check out is called Philly Funk, and this is one of my favorite presets that uses the rotary amp. It also uses a couple of the different pedals and studio effects, so let's check it out. Now finally, the last preset we're going to check out before we move on and dive into each of the individual pages is called Spring Loaded, and this one uses the double reverb amp. Now it has 3 different options for reverb. There's the spring reverb pedal loaded, there's also reverb built into the amp, and then we have reverb in the studio effects. So let's go ahead and listen to how those 3 reverbs sound differently from each other. So that gives you a clue what kind of range Electra is capable of, and that's just 3 presets out of over 100 that come with this thing. So now let's move on and check out the pedals page. In the first slot, we have a couple different filter effects, and the default choice that's loaded up here is the wah pedal. This thing can be set to auto or manual, and when it's in manual mode, you can actually control it with an expression pedal connected to your keyboard. I'm gonna leave it set to auto for now. Let's kick it on and hear what it sounds like. Now if we click the label below the wah pedal, we can swap it out for the Filtron, which is based on the legendary Mootron pedal, and it's a staple for funk players. This thing is a little more resonant and has its own special sound, so let's go ahead and check it out. In the second and third slots, we have a whole assortment of other pedals, including compression, modulation effects like chorus, flanger, and phaser, as well as time-based effects like reverb and delay. Now, the order that you put these second and third effects has a pretty big impact on the sound, especially when you're using the compressor pedal. For example, if you put modulation effects before or after compression, it can change the sound quite a bit. By default, we have the phaser loaded up in the second slot and the compressor loaded up in the third slot. So let's go ahead and turn those on, hear what they sound like. And then I'll swap out the phaser in the second slot for the other modulation effects so you can hear what those sound like too. Now to check out the time-based effect pedals, let's go ahead and load up this preset called Down the Rabbit Hole, which is one of my favorites of the more experimental presets. This one uses the tape echo in the second slot, which is based on the EP4, and the spring reverb in the third slot, which is based on the reverb from Hammond organs. Let's check it out. Now let's move on and check out the amplifiers page. Electra has 3 different amplifiers to choose from. First, we have the standard suitcase amp that came with the original Rhodes 88 for that unmistakable Rhodes sound that you've heard on countless records. We also have a rotary speaker, which is based on the Leslie Type 147 for dirtier, organ-inspired sounds with unique stereo movement. And then finally, we have a classic silver face combo amp based on the Fender Twin Reverb for more chimey and crunchy guitar-inspired tones. And there's also a DI option for full range clean tones. Each amp includes its own curated collection of vintage dynamic, ribbon, and condenser mics with multiple mic placement options for even more variation. And there's also dedicated controls for width, room tone, and mic level. Now, if you're using the combo amp or the rotary amp, if you go back to the keyboard page, you'll notice this little up arrow above the amp controls. And this lets you access the suitcase preamplifier section. So you can drive into each amp a little bit harder and still access the Rhodes EQ and vibrato settings. Each amp also responds to the mod wheel on your keyboard controller in different ways for performance-oriented control. On the suitcase and double reverb amp, it controls vibrato depth, and on the rotary speaker, it controls the speed that the horn and drum speakers are spinning. Now let's go back to the default preset and use the DI first so we can hear how Electra sounds with no amp. Then we'll cycle through each of the 3 options and change some of the mic settings so we can see what kind of variation we can get. Last but definitely not least, we have the studio effects page where we can put the finishing touches on our sound with a number of essential rack mount effects based on legendary studio hardware. These effects are designed with simple and intuitive controls so you can dial in your sound quickly without being bogged down by unnecessary options. First, we have a 5-band graphic EQ for quick and effective tone shaping, a simplified Blue Stripe 1176 for precise studio compression, a whole suite of stereo modulation effects, a versatile delay with multiple modes spanning from tape to digital, and a workhorse reverb with 5 different algorithms. Both the delay and the reverb are set up behind the scenes as send effects so you can dial in the perfect amount of each effect without overpowering your sound. And there's also an option to send the delay to the reverb for extra spacey and experimental sounds. The EQ, compressor, and modulation effects are set up as insert effects, and you can also swap the order of the EQ and the compressor for even more versatility. Now, one of my favorite presets for showing off the EQ, compression, and modulation effects is called Below-Fi. So let's load that up and check it out. On the EQ, we're scooping out a bunch of lows and boosting the highs, which give us that lo-fi telephone effect. On the 1176, we're using the fast preset, which is grabbing onto every note and keeping them all at the same volume. And on the modulation effect, we're using the analog wow and flutter option. And I love this effect in stereo. It really just widens up the sound in a really cool way. Now, while we're here, let's check out the other modes on the modulation effect as well. Now let's check out another preset that I really like called Cinematic Wash, which uses both the delay and the reverb effects to create a super spacey synth pad type sound. Let's hear what it sounds like. Now for this preset, we're using the ambience algorithm on the reverb, which has the longest delay time. Generally speaking, each of the other algorithms to the left have shorter and shorter decay times, but they also have their own unique tone as well. Now we're also boosting the highs and cutting the lows, which gives us that shimmery effect. Now on the delay, we're using the old style, which has the most tape saturation, and we're using the wide mode just to get some extra stereo width. Now finally, to get that ultra long reverb tail, we're sending the delay to the reverb at the maximum amount, which just blurs those delay repeats, extends the reverb decay time, and gives us that super ethereal sound. So that covers the main controls on all 4 pages, but if you can believe it, Electra goes even deeper than that. If you click the settings cog in the top right corner, you can access a bunch of behind the scenes settings that affect everything from tuning, the condition of the modeled Rhodes, sustain and noise options, velocity, and performance options. We won't go into all of those options here, but check out the manual for full details. So that covers it. No matter what kind of music you make, Electra can put classic sounds at your fingertips or help you discover completely new sounds to take your songs and productions to the next level. With all the different amps, pedals, mics, and effects, there's literally endless possibilities for making this legendary instrument your own. Electra is available today for individual purchase or on subscription as part of UAD Spark, along with a whole suite of other inspiring instruments like Waterfall, Ravel, Opal, and Polymax. Try out these plugins and more for free today at spark.uaudio.com. Now for more info, you can check out the product manuals at help.uaudio.com, and don't forget to subscribe to the Universal Audio YouTube channel for more videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.